together for a long time now on The One Ring. You've been working on it a lot longer than I have.
Yeah. Actually, this morning, for to answer a question on the Cubicle 7 forum, I digged up some old email messages just to check approximately when I started working on the game, and it came out that on September 2007 we were already brainstorming the thing.
Wow.
So it's been a long time.
There's no danger this has been rushed then.
No. Well, it was a very long and very slow process, actually. Before actually even Cubicle 7 was involved, we were much slower. Then when Cubicle 7 came on board of the project, everything started to make more sense.
Okay, sure. So Cubicle 7 are working with sophisticated games. That's right, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, because the genesis for the game is quite complex, because it started just because I had a phone call from a Spanish publisher, and they had this crazy idea of picking up the Lord of the Rings license, as it was left there, and nobody seemed interested in picking it up. And they contacted me because they had a story with me of being one of the authors of the War of the Ring board game, and because we discussed many times together during the fairs our common love for role-playing games in general. These guys are the guys from De Veer in Spain, and they are the publishers for example, D&D in Spain, and they have this excellent role-playing game called Capitana La Triste, taken from the stories from the novels of Arturo Pérez Reverte, and it's a very nice game. And they gave it to me as a present, and I played it for a few months, for one winter, and it was really a nice experience. So we got started in talking about role-playing games in general. And since my first published thing was a role-playing game back in '93, so I always been connected to role-playing games as a player and as a designer. Me and Marco, we just started making board games a bit more because it was more of a profitable market than the RPG market. And so, and of course, because role-playing games are very tough to design, and especially not being a native English speaker, for us to write a book in Italian, it was very difficult to get it published in outside of the Italian territory. So it's much easier to make board games. They have a maximum of maybe 40 pages if they're really dense. I know my War of the Ring game is even thicker than that. I mean, the collectible edition of that has a rule book of 80 pages, but it's not on the same league as role-playing games. So one morning they just decided that they wanted to pick up the license, and they called me to know if me and Marco could be interested in working on the game. And we actually weren't really keen. Actually, my first proposal after that first contact was to be behind the mechanical design of the game and have someone else writing it.
Okay.
We actually even proposed other designers, but then it's a long story that when everything was starting to be more practical when sophisticated games was involved, because Robert Hyde has a long history as a publisher of games based on the license from Tolkien Enterprises, now Middle-earth Enterprises. And he wasn't dealing with the RPG license at the moment, but he got this idea from the De Veer guys and started thinking about it. And when he knew that I was going, and me and Marco were going to be involved, since he has a very good working relationship with us, he started thinking it could be a good idea, and he started to try to persuade us into really writing a book. And it didn't take that much time to actually because change your mind, of course, because it's really one of those proposals you really can't turn down. Right?
Yeah.
A game on the Lord of the Rings, a role-playing game on the Lord of the Rings. So
yeah.
When you start to realize that it's going to be that it can actually happen, then it becomes really a dream come true.
Yeah.
And then, of course, everything started to fall into place when Angus Abramson from Cubicle 7 was contacted by Robert Hyde, because he knew him since a while, and he thought that Cubicle 7 was the best partner to make this thing happen, as we needed a publisher that was into the RPG market and with an established reputation, and of course that knew what they were doing. And so we could move from brainstorming to actually designing the game. Hearing Angus and Dominic's opinions on how the game should be developed and so on, and all the many things that happen when you start really putting things on paper.
Yeah, it's a tricky thing, isn't it, where it goes that transition from just ideas, where it's all very free and you can almost do anything, and then you've got to pick one thing to do. That's for each.
Yeah, especially
it,
Yeah, because with every game, everything works in your mind, and then you have to explain it to someone else, and many interesting rules, even in board games, work very well in your mind. Everything seems to click, and then you write them, and you realize that they're impossible to convey to someone else, and then and that's probably the moment when you realize you need to streamline something or to change the rule altogether, because even if when you get it, it's going to work, it must be gotten first.
So. Yeah, sure. No one's going to play it, are they? If it's too difficult to grasp, that puts up a big barrier, doesn't it?
So, like in many things, it actually is you first pile up many things, and then you start to pick things and throw them away when you realize that they are not actually needed, or. But I mean. Yeah, of course, and then there's you also, because since from the very beginning we started to put together ideas that involved either the mechanical part, I mean the design of the mechanics for the game, but also the look and the aesthetics of the game. So we...
yeah, because I think I came on board, I think there was John Howe artwork, wasn't there, before I came on board, but the rules weren't. Because often what happens, for example, now I art direct for Cubicle 7, we'll have a finished manuscript, it will all be play tested, it's ready to go, and art and layout kind of happen kind of around the same time, whereas this didn't work like that at all, did it? It was the look of the game came along with the rules, didn't it?
Well, yes. I think that me and Marco were sent to Switzerland to see Jon Howe. He was there. He was about to leave for New Zealand. He was already been there to work with Guillermo del Toro, but was still to leave for the very long period. I think he's still there. And when we went there, if I remember correctly, we had pretty much most of the ideas of what was going to be into the game, but not the mechanics in a finished state. So we had already decided basically the time frame, the area, and the cultures that were going to be into the game, and basically the focus of the game.
So did that come quite early in things, that the game does have quite a tight focus in comparison to games that have gone before set in Middle Earth? So did that come early?
Yeah, very early.
Okay, cool.
Very early, because it's in some ways that was influenced by, well, my own gaming experiences since many years back with games like King Arthur, Pendragon from Greg Stafford by Greg Stafford, and I think I put to practice what I always thought about what I thought a fantasy game needed to be actually working for me. I mean, it's not probably a coincidence that my own game, the one I published in '93 called Lex Arcana, it's an historical fantasy RPG where it's set in the 5th century, where the Roman Empire didn't fall because magic exists, and the Roman Empire actually found a way to profit from these esoteric knowledge. And so it was exactly a middle ground between fantasy and history. We could have historical things, historical accurate elements that I love in most games, plus we could do what we wanted with the chronology and have a different emperor on the throne and stuff like that. What I think makes it work is the blend of familiar things you recognize from myth and legends and from history and archaeology, and things that he invented. So it makes everything more possible, more realistic, because it seems like it belongs somewhere in our own past history. And that was probably very early on the idea that we had, that we wanted the game to sound as realistic as possible. So even the tightening of the focus and the restricting the game into a smaller area is done exactly to this purpose, because we think that if you really want to interpret a character living in the last years of the Third Age, you need to realize the fact that this is a place where the boundaries of your own village or your own town, basically, for many people, define the limit of their knowledge of the world. Everything else outside of that is just words you hear from maybe some merchants or from those weirdos going around traveling from place to another place like adventurers. So I think it's very important to reconstruct what you feel by reading The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, is to make the correct proportions. You're not like the reader after its 10th reading of The Lord of the Rings that knows everything, knows the history of the 3 ages of the world. You are like someone who just heard stories told about other people living on the other side of the mountains or the other side of the forest. So that was very early on our take. And I think that if you come to the books with some fresh eyes, I mean, if you try to have a look at the books without thinking about your knowledge after probably many years, if you read that many years before, you realize that the books are written like that, with people discovering things